Warzone 2.0 is releasing in less than 3 days, and today I'm going to cover everything that you need to know about Warzone 2.0 and DMZ. This is going to be everything that you need to know from where to land, what weapons to use, all the best areas of the map, and what all the points of interest and different things you can interact with are. So let's go ahead and start off by diving into why the map is easily the best map we've seen out of Call of Duty in years. It has tons of different locations, things to do, sights to see, and legacy locations from previous Call of Duty games. It is genuinely so much better than Caldera.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
And before we start today, I want to give a big shout out to Modern Warzone, allowing me to use his Warzone 2.0 gameplay at the Call of Duty event in my video today. I'm going to include a link to all of his stuff down below, and while you're down there, go ahead and hit the subscribe button to make sure you're stay up to date with all of your Call of Duty information. Let's go ahead and start off by talking about some of the different points of interest and missions in Warzone 2.0. The first thing we need to talk about is SAM sites. SAM sites are surface-to-air missiles that will take out any helicopters or planes in the general vicinity of the SAM site. You can do a couple different things with these SAM sites. You can destroy them and get a reward for it, or claim them and shoot down any helicopters or planes that fly overhead. However, these SAM sites will shoot down any aircraft in the air, including your own friendly helicopters. It makes no differentiation between enemy and friendly aircraft. It eliminates all aircraft from an area. The next thing to talk about is strongholds. Strongholds are different fortified buildings surrounded by AI and having AI in them that guard it. When you kill out all the AI inside the building, you get to unlock a special weapon crate that gives you your loadout. However, it didn't really seem like it was worth the trouble from what we saw in Warzone 2.0. It seemed like you had to kill around 30 to 40 AI just to get inside of a building to get your loadout. On the other hand, you could have just bought a loadout for $10,000, not had to go through all that trouble. And on top of that, Strongholds got a continuous supply of AI troops coming in, from helicopters or trucks constantly. So you were burning through ammo greatly just to get your 1 or 2 weapons that you needed out of your loadout. In my opinion, it's not really worth it to do unless you have a key. You get keys in Warzone 2.0 by killing enemies or just looting them off the ground, and they lock certain specific areas of the map. When you unlock this, it has very high tier loot in it, and from what we've seen, you'll need to use a bunch of these keys to unlock the nuke in Warzone 2.0. From everything we've seen, keys are going to play a very big part in the Warzone 2.0 story. At the end of the day, anything can be a key, including a bullet. A bullet is basically just a key that unlocks someone's death.
Or it's a key of time, and when you stick it in people, it unlocks their death.
However, one of the other notable points of interest on the map is gas stations. Gas stations will both repair and refuel your vehicle. However, they're usually in areas with no cover. So it's kind of one of those areas you want to get in, refuel, and repair as fast as possible, and get out. But one thing I think really everyone wants to look at is this picture right here. This picture shows you the best areas to drop. The green areas are your low risk drop. The red areas, your high risk drop, areas where a lot more people are more likely to drop. The white areas, just don't go there. It's a really, really bad idea. The areas right here highlighted in yellow are your high ground or hills, areas that you want to be on top of if you want to take a long sight range with something like a sniper rifle. And these areas right here that are boxed in blue are your high grounds or roofs, the power positions of an area that you really want to take when it's coming down to the end of the circle. I definitely recommend everyone looks at it and finds the best areas to drop and memorizes it, and I'll include a link to that picture right down here below. But the next thing I want to talk about is we've got a new look at the looting system. For all you literal loot goblins out there. The loot spawns in different areas on the floor, shelves, and boxes and bags, and in the normal crates that you open up. When you open up the crates, the loot is just thrown out on the floor and you can pick out what you want. When it's in something like a cash register or a locker, you actually have to manually select what you want out and drop it into your backpack. Which brings me up to the next point, backpacks. The backpack system is still a little complicated, but has definitely got thinned out a little bit. With backpacks, there's definitely a drastic improvement from going from a level 1 backpack to a level 2 to a level 3. Each backpack gives you an additional 2 to 3 slots, which gives you a lot more ammo storage, lethal storage, and room for things like self-revives or revive pistols. However, I definitely think there's going to be a big change coming to the UI and the way you operate backpacks in the coming future, because a lot of people still have complaints about it that got to play Warzone 2.0 early. And from what we saw, while looting, you stumble across a ton of backpacks. It feels like you're almost going to school, there's so many backpacks.
I'm not here to play school.
However, in DMZ, it's going to work a little bit different with the looting system. You'll still have all the same loot you would have gotten in Warzone, but you'll have other things you can pick up, such as thumb drives, pocket watches, or anything like that you can sell at a buy station to get money to buy more kill streaks or weapons or whatever else you're going to need to survive in DMZ. However, DMZ was a little bit of a letdown. It was basically just Warzone with extra steps. And with DMZ, it's a little bit different towards the end of the game. Everything starts getting forced together, but you have different areas you can extract from. And these areas become heavily guarded by AI, so the faster you get there, the less AI there will be to guard it. But you only have 10 minutes to reach one of these extraction zones and get out. And there's also a lot higher tier AI in DMZ. You actually run into juggernauts or other things like that while you're in DMZ that you normally wouldn't run into in Warzone. Another thing that's a little bit different about DMZ is definitely a longer game mode. You have 40 minutes to loot, then you have 10 minutes to reach the area of the map where the gas is shrinking you into, and from there you have 10 minutes to reach an extract and get out. So games of DMZ can normally take up to an hour if you wait till the very last second to extract, which is something we don't usually get in Warzone. Warzone games usually end within 20 to 30 minutes. However, with all the gameplay we saw a few weapons that definitely stood out among the rest. First off, SMGs were one of the better classes in Warzone 2 and DMZ. They're a lot more versatile than they were in the original Warzone, with a range of about 50 meters. So you can hit your shots and kill an enemy, but the further you get out, the less damage you're going to do. And among SMGs, the MP5 and the Vaznev really stood out as being the best. Things like the MP7 were limited to being a close range weapon that you really couldn't get anything out above 25 meters. Or some of the other SMGs like the AUG was a little too slow with aim down sights to actually be able to use in combat. However, the biggest limiting factor of SMGs was range. Anything between 25 and 50 meters felt like you were hitting the enemy with peas. It wasn't doing a lot of damage to him. And anything beyond 50 meters, you really couldn't hit accurately. So that brought out the point of what is the best close to mid-range weapon. And ARs definitely stood out. Going into Warzone 2's gameplay, everyone thought LMGs were going to be the move. However, LMGs proved to be way too slow in combat, with slow aim down sights and lowering of the mobility from turning side to side. They really didn't work out. But assault rifles definitely stood out. And Season 1 of Warzone is going to reintroduce the M13 and the Kilo 141 into the game, so I highly expect the Kilo 141 will be everyone's go-to weapon in Warzone 2.0. And assault rifles kind of filled that very wide range of variety for conflicts. You could do close range, you could do mid-range, and in some cases you could even do long ranges. But as you got out to a lot more long ranges, the bullet drop was a lot more affected and you did a lot less damage, so it was harder to hit your shots at that range and effectively kill an enemy. Which is what brings me up to the next point. When you get to the long range engagements, don't use tactical rifles or battle rifles. They are not effective in Warzone 2.0. It takes about 4 to 5 shots with one of these weapons to actually kill somebody in the game. Sniper rifles are a lot more effective with being able to kill someone in less than 3 shots, a one-shot headshot being an instant down or kill, center mass taking 2 shots, extremity shots took 3 or 4 shots to actually kill somebody. I mean, aiming for the extremities like the knee is definitely good if you want to end someone's career as an adventurer.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
However, you can't just use weapons. Things like tacticals and lethals definitely had a place in Warzone 2.0. Stun grenades were great if an enemy was pinning you down and you're trying to get around them to flank them. Flash grenades are great if an enemy has you pinned in a building and you're trying to escape out the sides and you don't want them to see you. You can hit them with a flashbang, you blind them for long enough for you to escape the building. However, on the other side of it, we had lethals. Frag grenades did a lot of damage. Some Texas stuck to the enemy and most of the time downed them if you stuck them. And on top of that, things like the breach charges were great for getting enemies who like to camp in buildings. Another thing to note is shock sticks are great in Warzone 2.0 for one reason specifically. They can disable vehicles when they're struck with a shock stick. Things like a driving vehicle will have a harder time controlling and won't be able to actually accelerate while the shock stick is hitting them. Things like an aircraft that quickly lose altitude and have a harder time controlling the landing of the helicopter than anything else. It's definitely worth using while you're in Warzone 2.0. However, throwing knives are definitely kind of the go-to for people who like to rush into rooms. Throwing knives are great because once an enemy is down and you hit them with a throwing knife, it's an instant kill and you don't have to hit them again with 3 or 4 shots from a gun to actually finish them. And it stops them from self-reviving or their teammates coming back around and reviving them if they get you out of that building. However, there's a lot of stuff that happens in Warzone 2.0 that's just not being covered yet because we don't know what it is. We have Season 1 coming around the corner here and there's going to be a lot of things introduced with Season 1, but Warzone 2.0 is going to be a constantly evolving game. There's going to be a ton of things that are added to Warzone 2.0 during the seasons and at the beginning of new seasons. So if you want to stay up to date with all of your Call of Duty information, make sure you subscribe down below. Because I am IceBurgz, your Call of Duty informant. Stay frosty.